Good morning, Ron.
The title of our talk this morning is Across the River Jordan. Someone gave me a collection of answers that some children gave in a Bible class. And one young child came up with this one. The greatest miracle in the Bible is when Joshua told his son to stand still and he obeyed him. If you're a parent, maybe that has meaning for you. In my local church that I go to in Montana, someone gave a talk on Joshua, and I remembered one of the keys for interpreting that book, later remembered a second. We're told somewhere in our teachings, I believe, that the River Jordan is symbolic of the spine and the energies that play up and down the spine. Water, of course, is the emotional element. Everything in the Bible, even if it's historical, happens within as well as without. And sometimes it's intended only to be taken as something that happens within. And every character in the Bible represents some phase of our own character development. The good people, the bad, the heroes, the cowards. We all experience that at some time in our journey toward wisdom. Some writer compared the Bible to a woman, in that there's body, soul, spirit, and the body is covered with a garment which both reveals at the same time it conceals the figure within. Let me just elaborate on that a little bit. If I were to pick on one of the ladies in our audience today and say, that's a very becoming dress you're wearing today, mentally, she'd kind of roll her eyes up, whether she did physically or not, and she'd think, this guy's trying to butter me up. He wants something. Nonetheless, you just might hear her say, tell me more. On the other hand, if I said to her, you are a beautiful dress, one hand would go into her purse looking for mace, or that tactical flashlight, or maybe even more substantial hardware. And she'd be looking around for the nearest exit that didn't involve going through me. And if I said to her, you are an ugly dress, she wouldn't reach for hardware, she'd just grab the nearest hymnal and start beating me with it. Well, we do this to the Bible. You know, some people will say, well, every word is true. If they're like me, they probably only understand about 24 words, so they have no clue as to whether every word is true or not. And if you read a book like Joshua, you may say, the Bible is really horrible. It's a terrible book. But if you understand that the Bible is somehow a body, soul, and spirit covered with a garment, yes, some places the garment is beautiful, some places the garment is not. It's horrible. And Joshua is one of those books. In this book, seems like everybody misbehaves, at least on the Israeli side of the issue. God tells a people, you can cross a river and there's a promised land over there and you can have it even though there are people living over there already. And the people of this land many are murdered, some are driven out, and a few of the smarter ones agree to be slaves so they get to live. In one place, Joshua is told when he goes to fight some of his enemies, God tells him to burn the chariots. Well, that's kind of understandable in a war. But hamstring their horses. Now, I'm sure that growing up in Montana and living there, I've absorbed some of the culture that was probably a lot truer 100 years ago than it is today. But still, somebody who harms a horse, the question is, how quickly can we hang them? We're not even going to honor them by going and buying a new rope. Well, we'll come back to that. So let's see if this story has some deeper meaning. I'll read the first 8 verses of the book of Joshua, and that'll give us kind of the lay of the land. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, came to pass that the Lord spoke unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan thou, and all this people unto the land which I give unto them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide an inheritance, the land which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, and thou mayst observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, and thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Joshua the son of Nun. The word Nun means fish. So it's like to say Joshua the son of the deep mysteries. Corinne Helene calls him initiate son. Joshua, by the way, is an English word. And the word that it sounds a little like in Hebrew is the same word that was Jesus' name. Jesus is an English word that we take from Greek, but it goes back to something like Yeshua. I'm sure I remember a little better that word, but not right offhand. Also, emphasized in that opening is be strong and courageous. Wherever we're going on our spiritual journey, these are qualities that we need to express. Meditate on the law day and night. This is probably good advice for us as well. Joshua sent 2 spies across the River Jordan, and they went to a harlot. Kind of a strange thing for spies to do. Well, maybe actually not, but it's not the kind of thing you expect to see in the Bible. But this harlot was wise, courageous, intelligent enough to create a way to save these two men. She was very perceptive. She knew the Israelites had God in their favor. Corinne Helene puts in parentheses the word former behind her name. And Matthew, when he writes the genealogy of Jesus to opening chapter of Matthew, he lists 5 women in what seems to be an otherwise all-male genealogy. And one of those women was Rahab the harlot from Jericho. So there is a concept of the divine feminine. It has always eluded me, and even thinking about it, it's kind of, I can kind of see it vaguely, you might say. But I think in the Garden of Eden, before the human race fell, Adam and Eve walked and talked with God. Then they were expelled and they no longer heard God's voice. Then Cain killed Abel, and Abel was the one of faith, the one who heard perhaps the still small voice, if nothing else. And so I think this concept is referring to that one part of ourselves that we largely buried long ago, and we turned our consciousness outward into the material world. So we not only laugh at feminine intuition, we men laugh at our own intuition. We don't trust in the still small voice. So I think this is what Rahab is representing in this story. Joshua was told to pick 12 strong men before crossing the River Jordan, one from each tribe. That is to say, before we cross our own River Jordan, we must develop the qualities of the 12 zodiacal signs, experience the analog 12 houses of the horoscope. He tells the people that they will see great work of God tomorrow. And then he tells the people that you are to follow the ark, but you're to follow at a considerable distance, about 2,000 cubits, which would be 3,000 feet, about a kilometer. And I think there the analogy might be, if we go outside and look at the beautiful sun that's shining today, you can glance up at the sun. If it gets real cloudy, you could look at the sun. If you have some very dark glass, you can look at the sun. But you don't dare look at the sun directly very long, or it'll burn your eyes and damage them. Well, on a soul level, we are not, most of us evolved to the point where we can look at the light of the Spirit, the light of God directly without damage being caused to ourselves. And so I'm thinking this is the reason why people had to follow the ark at a distance. The priests were told that when they entered the river, which was at flood stage, it would stop. We have a supernatural miracle. This river that's flooding all of a sudden stops flowing and the water builds up as if there were a dam. So I think this, if anything else, is telling us we have to interpret the book of Joshua on a level of soul development, not as a series of murders against a bunch of people who are living more or less peacefully in their own land. Sure, they were sinful people, but so were the Israelites. If every sinner died today, the chapel would be empty. Or at least there'd be one less here, I'm sure. So anyway, it happens, according to the book, that when they step into the river, it stops flowing. But remember, water is the emotional element. Before you can cross the river, you must not only have the lessons of life that we mentioned with the 12 strong men, but you must also, from a spiritual level, be able to tell the emotions, be still. Yeah, we all have emotions. Sometimes they're rather turbulent. But when the Spirit gains that power to say, as Jesus did for the storm, be still, this is another requirement for crossing that river. After all the people had crossed on the dry land, he told the 12 strong men, go into the riverbed, pick up 12 fairly large rocks, bring them to shore, and build a monument, a memorial for future generations so that they don't forget this wonderful happening of the river stopping. But I think it's really to tell future generations what others have done, you also can do. Each one of us are being called to a promised land. And so the memorial was built, and then God told him to have all the men circumcised again. I don't know, I cringe a little at this thought. But circumcision, the circum says to draw a circle. And the scission is to cut or restrict. All of us have to restrict our activities in accordance with the Ten Commandments. Or sexually, we have to have some boundaries. Now, the boundaries of the person living the day-to-day life can be more gentle, less restrictive than the person who crosses the river on a spiritual pilgrimage. Max Heindel compared the life of a Christian to the steeple. At the base it is broad and much will be allowed us, but eventually it narrows to a point where only the cross remains. Okay, so you're probably all familiar with the story of the Israeli troops marching around Jericho for 6 days. 6 days they marched once around. On the 7th day they marched 7 times. Then they blew their trumpets and all of the men in the army shouted simultaneously. Well, today we know that violins sometimes break wine goblets and that musical vibrations or audio signals applied to a plate can make arrangements of flour or milk or sand on a... And so we know that the word is not only a symbol, but it is somehow an analogy to how the world is built with vibrations. But the Bible is not telling us this story because you can break wine glasses with a violin or bridges by a rhythmic tramp across them. There's something spiritual there. I think it is that our spirit at some point can speak the word that breaks down the walls that encompass our own past thinking, our angers, our fears, our greed, and so forth. And human beings tend to accumulate a vast number of emotions and thoughts that at some point must be overcome, gotten rid of. So Joshua was told, go into Jericho, kill all the men, women, and children, all the animals too, level the city, and keep nothing except the silver and gold, I think, vessels, and put them in the temple, or the temple. Now, historically speaking, I don't think anybody's discovered any evidence to support the idea that Jericho was destroyed. And of course we know that if it was destroyed, it was rebuilt. There's a city today of Jericho. It may be small, I don't remember, but it does exist. So again, we need to interpret this inwardly. Someone, however, kept some silver, some gold, and a beautiful robe for himself. And he buried it in the earth under his tent, under his tabernacle, his aura, so to speak. Well, silver's the lessons of the personality or power. Gold is the lessons of the spirit. And that beautiful robe probably symbolized this is somebody who did not want to go ahead and give up the beautiful robe of material living and put on the robe of spiritual living, which to most people doesn't look very appealing from the outside. Horses. I'd like to read one more verse from Psalms. Psalm 76, verse 6. At thy rebuke, O God of Jacob, both the chariot and the horse are cast into a deep sleep. I think at home my Bible had it a little differently, but it had the same meaning. The chariot is a transportation. The horse is the power that pulls it. In other words, in astrology, it's Gemini, the concrete mind, and Sagittarius, the higher spiritual mind, or inspiration and ideals. So Joshua is ordered to burn the chariot and hamstring the horse, was just a way of symbolically saying, you must take those enemies that are within, and you must burn those lower thoughts that no longer support you. And the horse, of course, in astrology, it's not the horse, it's the centaur, the half man, half horse. It's the human and divine reason leading the animal part of our nature. So I don't know if any horses were hamstrung, but that's not the essential message there. Of course, probably as that child that I read about earlier understood, there was a battle in which was not ended at sunset. And so Joshua requested that the sun go on shining. There is a book called The Invisible Helpers by Amber Tuttle. I'm not sure, no, I guess we don't publish it, but most of our members own a copy. And it says in that book that the literal meaning of that was that, of course, the sun went down at the same time as it would every day. stopping the earth from rotating so the sun would be still in the sky would be not only a giant miracle, but would affect the entire solar system. So literally, it probably didn't happen quite that way. So the book I mentioned said that an angel or an archangel stood on the horizon and gave the light. I think what it's really saying is that when we are fighting the holy war within, the spirit shall not dim. The light will go on until we finish that battle. So, why this rather strange method of writing scripture? Even today, violent things catch our attention. Miraculous things also catch our attention. So the story, even in this time and age, is something that when we read that will be impressed upon our subconscious. Hopefully we understand that there is the deeper reason behind all of those battles. Corinne Helene, the writer of our Bible books, said that this story is basically the 12 labors of Hercules, or the 12 tortures of the Egyptian mysteries, similar in meaning to each level was a new level of understanding for Joshua, or as we say in our teachings, an initiation into one higher level. So I want to leave with you this parting thought. No matter how unprepossessing the exterior garment of your life has been, nonetheless, you were born for a high spiritual calling, and if you have not yet reached it, remember the only failure is ceasing to try. The Chinese have a saying, fear not going slow, fear only stopping. And may your 12 labors of climbing the celestial ladder be swift. Thank you.